The flight attendant strutted down the aisle like she owned the sky, eyes sharp, lips tight, and on the hunt for something or someone to feel superior to. She locked eyes on a black family in first class and didn't even try to hide her disdain. "You people must be lost," she snapped loud enough to turn heads, her tone dripping with arrogance. Amara Johnson, holding her young son Micah's hand, opened her mouth to explain, but the woman raised a hand, already signaling for security like they'd just tried to hijack the damn plane. They were escorted off within minutes. No explanation, no real questions, just the humiliation of being treated like intruders in a space they rightfully paid to be in. What that flight attendant, Carla Simmons, didn't know, what not a single person on that flight realized, was who Amara really was. More importantly, who her husband David was. See, that wasn't just a black family taking a trip to Paris. That was the Johnson family. Amara, the calm and collected wife of David Johnson, the tech mogul behind the software that powers half the world's flight logistics. The same David Johnson who just last year acquired a majority stake in Airline Global, the very airline now throwing his family off its plane like they were stowaways. This was supposed to be a surprise getaway. David had worked himself into the ground for years, sleepless nights, 1,000 sacrifices, and now he finally had a moment to breathe. So he booked first-class tickets, nothing too flashy, just comfort and peace for his wife and son. They boarded early, settled into row 1A with quiet smiles, Amara humming softly while Micah bounced in his seat, excited about seeing the Eiffel Tower. No diamond chains, no Gucci logos, just well-tailored clothes and warm energy. But to Carla, that wasn't enough. Appearances meant everything to her, and in her eyes, these folks didn't fit the mold of first class. So she decided to teach them a lesson. Back in the terminal, Amara sat in silence, staring straight ahead. Her hands shook as she squeezed Micah's little fingers. "Mommy, did we do something wrong?" he whispered. David knelt beside his son and spoke so softly it almost broke her. "No, son, but we're going to make this right." He didn't raise his voice. He didn't post or rant online. David simply pulled out his phone and made a call, not to a customer service rep, not to a lawyer, but to the executive board of Airline Global. "Ground that plane," he said. "Get internal affairs. Lock down the manifest." Back on board, Carla was practically bragging to another attendant. "That'll show them," she smirked. Freeloaders trying to act like they belong. Her coworker didn't reply. She was pale as a ghost. The cabin phone had just rung, and on the other end was a quiet voice that said, "You just kicked our CEO's family off your plane." Minutes later, the pilot's voice came through the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, due to an internal personnel matter, this flight is currently grounded. We apologize for the delay." The doors swung open. A small team in suits entered. No smiles. No small talk. Just tension so thick you could feel it in your teeth. Carla straightened her uniform, tried to act like nothing was off. "Is there a problem?" she asked. One of the suits looked her dead in the eyes. "Where's Carla Simmons?" She blinked. "I'm Carla. You've been relieved of duty. You'll be escorted for questioning." "Excuse me? Why?" That's when David walked in. He didn't need an entourage. He didn't need to yell. His presence alone shifted the air. "Because," he said, "you humiliated my wife, you embarrassed my son, and you insulted the people who built this airline, because they didn't fit your picture of wealth." Carla stammered something about misunderstanding, about procedure, but he raised a hand. He wasn't interested in excuses. "Your bias," he said, "cost this company trust. And more importantly, it hurt my family. You're done here." Passengers who had heard the earlier outburst were now filming, whispering, texting. Some looked ashamed, others nodded in quiet support. Amara and Micah were quietly reboard, this time greeted with respect, sincere apologies from crew members who hadn't looked twice before. The story didn't stay on that plane. Passengers shared clips on social media, tweets went viral before the flight even took off. Headlines exploded. CEO's family kicked off plane in first-class discrimination scandal. Carla's name trended for all the wrong reasons. She released a public apology the next day, robotic, cold, probably written by legal, but the damage was done. Aerolux immediately launched mandatory diversity and empathy training across the entire airline. David didn't stop there. He pushed for something deeper, a second-chance hiring initiative for people who've been overlooked, mistreated, judged because of how they looked or where they came from. He wasn't trying to go viral. He wasn't seeking revenge. He just knew that for real change to happen, someone with power had to use it the right way. When they finally took off, this time on a private Aerolux jet, Micah curled up beside his dad, sleep tugging at his eyes. Did we win, Daddy? He asked softly. David looked out the window, then back at his son. No, son, we taught them. And that's the thing. Sometimes justice doesn't look like slamming a door or flipping a table. It looks like holding your ground, staying calm, and letting the truth shake the room instead. So now, I gotta ask you, what would you have done in that moment? Was David too calm? Was Carla just a product of a broken system, or something worse? Let's talk about it. What does justice really look like in 2025? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear everything, right, wrong, in between. Because this conversation, it's not done yet. Because the truth is, stories like this don't just end when the plane takes off, they ripple. They stick in people's minds. They poke at something deeper than just one bad decision by one biased person. They reveal how everyday power can either heal or harm, depending on who's holding it and how they use it. And the thing is, Carla wasn't some villain in a movie. She wasn't waving a pitchfork or shouting slurs. She was smiling, polite, just doing her job, right? That's the part that scares me. It wasn't loud. It wasn't violent. It was subtle, coded in customer service, but it stung just the same. It reminded a little boy that the world might not see his family the way he does. It reminded a woman that no matter how much grace she carries herself with, someone out there still sees her as less than. But here's what made the difference. David didn't let rage take the wheel. He used what he had, his position, his reputation, his voice, to shine a spotlight on what too often gets brushed under the rug. And he didn't just stop at firing someone. That would have been easy. No, he looked at the whole system and said, This isn't working. Let's build something better. Now, I get it. Some people watching probably think, she made a mistake. She shouldn't lose her job over that. And look, I'm not saying people can't change, but accountability comes first. You don't get to humiliate a child and walk away like it was a scheduling error. The part that sticks with me most isn't the confrontation, it's Micah's question. That pure, wide-eyed innocence. Did we win? And the way David answered, not with some triumphant, yes, not with a smug, of course, but with that quiet truth, we taught them. That's the real win, isn't it? Changing minds. Opening eyes. Making sure the next black family that walks into first class gets a smile instead of suspicion. Making sure kids like Micah grow up believing they belong everywhere, not just in the seats they pay for, but in the world, period. And the best part? That moment on the jet, after all the noise had settled. Amara, finally letting her shoulders drop. Micah asleep in her lap, his tiny breath steady. David looking out at the clouds, knowing he didn't just protect his family, he gave them something bigger than a vacation. He gave them dignity, visibility, a lesson in what real strength looks like. So now, I want to leave you with this. What kind of power do you have? Maybe you're not a CEO. Maybe you don't own a fleet of planes. But maybe you're the coworker who speaks up when someone gets treated unfairly. Maybe you're the manager who rewrites policy. Maybe you're the stranger who records that video when no one else will. Whatever it is, use it. Because silence? That's how this stuff survives. All right, your turn. Was the punishment too harsh? Did David handle it right? Should Carla get a second chance? Or is this what accountability finally looks like? And deeper still, how do we fix the part of the system that taught her to think that way in the first place? Tell me what you think. The comment section's yours. Let's have that uncomfortable, necessary conversation. Not just about who's right or wrong, but about how we move forward. Together.